G'day mates, welcome to the wonderful world of Aussie slang. Now we Aussies are known for our laid back attitude and love of a good laugh, and our slang is no exception. It's full of quirky words and phrases that reflect our unique culture and way of life. So whether you're planning a trip down under or just curious about how we speak, buckle up and get ready for a wild ride through the Aussie lexicon. Let's kick us off with the most iconic Aussie greeting of all. G'day. But did you know g'day is more than just a simple hello? It's a way of saying, hey mate, I'm friendly and approachable and I'm happy to see you. You'll hear it everywhere from the bustling streets of Sydney to the quietest corners of the outback. It's the Aussie way of spreading good vibes and making everyone feel welcome. And speaking of making people feel welcome, there's no better way to do that than by calling them mate. In Australia, mate is more than just a word for friend. It's a term of endearment, a sign of respect, and a way of showing that you're all part of the same team. You could be meeting someone for the first time, and if they call you mate, you know you're in good company. It's like a secret handshake, a way of saying, we're all in this together, mate. Now, let's say you make a mistake or accidentally bump into someone. In Australia, we like to keep things casual, so we'd probably just say, no worries. It's our way of saying, don't stress about it, mate. It's all good. It's the perfect phrase to diffuse any awkward situation and keep the good vibes flowing. All right, now that we've covered the basics of Aussie greetings and apologies, let's move on to some other essential slang terms. Ever heard of arvo? It's simply short for afternoon, and it's the perfect example of how Aussies love to shorten words and keep things simple. So next time you're down under, don't be surprised if you hear someone say, catch you this arvo. Now picture this, a sunny afternoon, a backyard with friends and family, and the delicious smell of sizzling sausages wafting through the air. That's the essence of an Aussie barbie, our beloved barbecue. Whether it's a casual gathering in the backyard or a full-blown feast at the beach, a barbie is the perfect way to bring people together and enjoy some good food and good company. And speaking of those delicious sausages sizzling on the barbie, we Aussies have a special name for them, snags. So next time you're invited to a barbie, make sure you're ready to throw a few snags on the grill. Feeling peckish? Craving some classic fast food? Then it's time to head to Muckers. That's right, it's our nickname for McDonald's. And it's not just a nickname, it's so ingrained in our culture that you might even see it on some signs unofficially. Ever been to a restaurant or bar that's absolutely packed with people? Well, in Australia we'd say it's chockers. It's a fun, casual way of saying that a place is full to the brim. And if you need to use the bathroom while you're out and about, don't be surprised if you hear someone say they're going to the dunny. It's just our quirky way of saying toilet, so don't be shy if you need to go. Just ask where the dunny is. All right, now that we've covered some of the most common Aussie slang terms, let's take a closer look at how slang varies across different regions. First up, we'll head to Sydney and New South Wales, where the slang is as diverse and vibrant as the city itself. All right, mates, now that we've got a handle on some classic Aussie slang, let's dive deeper into the lingo of New South Wales, the state where it all began. From the beaches of Bondi to the bustling streets of Sydney, NSW has its own unique flavour when it comes to slang. So get ready to expand your Aussie vocabulary and impress your mates with these local gems. Ever heard of wagging school? It's a classic Aussie tradition, basically playing hooky. It's the perfect way to escape the daily grind and enjoy a bit of freedom. So if you hear someone say they're wagging, don't be surprised if they're nowhere to be found in the classroom or office. Now let's give a shout out to the unsung heroes of our streets, the garbos. These hardworking folks are the ones who keep our cities clean and tidy, collecting our rubbish week in, week out. So next time you see a garbo, give them a wave and a g'day. Picture this. You're cruising down the highway, the sun's shining, and suddenly you realise you're running low on petrol. Don't worry, mate. Just pull into the nearest servo, short for service station. A servo is your one-stop shop for fuel, snacks, and drinks. Speaking of those hot Aussie summers, let's talk about those pesky little creatures that love to bite mozzies. These tiny bloodsuckers can be a real pain, especially when you're trying to enjoy a barbie or a day at the beach. So don't forget to pack your insect repellent. Ever seen a kid throw a tantrum? In Australia, we call that spitting the dummy. It's a funny expression, but it perfectly captures that moment when someone, usually a child, gets upset and throws a fit. Now, let's talk about an essential item for any Aussie adventure, the esky. This trusty cooler is perfect for keeping your drinks and snacks cold on a hot day, whether you're heading to the beach, the park, or a backyard barbie. Speaking of the beach, have you ever heard of a Bondi cigar? It's a cheeky term for a piece of rubbish floating in the water that looks like a cigar. It's a funny way of describing something we all wish wasn't there. But hey, at least we can have a laugh about it. Ever met someone who's a bit clumsy, forgetful, or just not very bright? In Aussie slang, we might call them a drongo. It's a light-hearted way of saying someone's a bit of a fool, but it's all in good fun. And finally, let's talk about that classic Aussie pub feed, the parmi. This delicious dish of crumbed chicken topped with melted cheese and tomato sauce is a pub staple in NSW. And it's the perfect way to satisfy your hunger after a long day. So there you have it, mates. A taste of the slang you'll hear in Sydney and New South Wales. From wagging school to Bondi cigars to parmas. These words and phrases are all part of the unique charm of this beautiful state. So next time you're in NSW, don't be afraid to use a bit of slang. It's the best way to connect with the locals and experience the true Aussie spirit. All right, now let's head south to Melbourne, the cultural heart of Australia, where the slang is just as colourful, but with its own unique flavour. You might think you know Aussie slang, but Melbourne's got a few surprises up its sleeve. All right, let's test your Aussie slang knowledge. What do you call this classic pub dish? A crispy chicken schnitzel topped with melted cheese and tomato sauce. Is it a parmi, a parma, or maybe something else entirely? Well, the answer is it depends on where you are in Australia. In Sydney and NSW, it's a parmi, but down here in Melbourne, we call it a parma. It's the same delicious dish, but with a different name and a slightly different vibe. Now, Melbourne isn't just about satisfying your hunger, it's about feeding your soul too. And what better way to do that than with a good cuppa? Melbourne is practically the coffee capital of Australia, with laneways overflowing with quirky cafes and baristas who take their coffee seriously. But don't just settle for any old cuppa. In Melbourne, you've got to try a flat white. This creamy, dreamy concoction is a Melbourne must-have, and it's the perfect way to kickstart your day. Now, while you're sipping your flat white and soaking up the Melbourne vibes, you might hear someone say they're feeling a bit Davo. Davo is short for devastated, and it's the perfect word to describe that feeling you get when your team loses a close match or when you miss out on the last slice of cake. But hey, even when you're feeling Devo, there's always a way to bounce back in Melbourne. And what better way to lift your spirits than with a bit of footy? Aussie rules football, that is. In Victoria, footy is more than just a game, it's a religion. The passion, the energy, the camaraderie, it's all part of the Melbourne experience. Now, if you're lucky enough to catch a game at the MCG, you'll witness the true spirit of Melbourne footy. You'll hear fans roaring, "Go the D's!" or "Up the Cats!" And when the siren sounds, don't be surprised if you find yourself swept up in a sea of chanting and singing, because in Victoria, footy is more than just a sport. It's a way of life. Speaking of footy, have you ever heard of taking a sickie? Now, this is a classic Aussie move, especially after a big game or wild night out. It's basically calling in sick to work, even if you're not actually sick. It's the perfect excuse to recover from all the excitement and enjoy a lazy day off. But even if you're not taking a sickie, you'll still need a smoko every now and then. A smoko is basically a break, a chance to step away from the hustle and bustle and recharge your batteries. Whether you're grabbing a quick bite, a cuppa, or just catching your breath, a smoko is the perfect way to unwind, Victoria style. And what better way to enjoy your smoko than with a delicious sanger? That's a sandwich for those not in the know. Whether it's a classic ham and cheese or something a bit more gourmet, a sanger is the perfect fuel for a busy day in Melbourne. So there you have it, a taste of Melbourne slang served with a side of coffee and footy. From parmas to flat whites to sickies, these words and phrases capture the essence of this vibrant city. So next time you're in Melbourne, don't be afraid to throw a few Aussie slang terms into the mix. You might just surprise yourself with how quickly you fit right in. All right, mates, we've explored the slang of Sydney and Melbourne, but the Aussie lingo adventure doesn't stop there. Let's take a whirlwind tour of the rest of Australia, where you'll discover even more quirky and colourful expressions. From the tropical north to the rugged outback to the island state of Tassie, each region has its own unique slang that's sure to make you chuckle. Up north in Queensland, where the sun always shines and the lifestyle is laid back, you'll find some real gems. Ever heard someone say, "Yeah, no"? Don't be confused, mate. It actually means yes. It's a classic Queenslandism that perfectly captures the easygoing spirit of the Sunshine State. And if you're ever feeling a bit overwhelmed by someone's presence, you can always tell them to rack off, a polite way of saying go away or leave me alone. But don't worry, mate. It's usually said with a smile. Oh, and don't forget to pack your cossie, that's your swimsuit, and your stubbies, your shorts when you head to the beach. Now let's head west to Western Australia, the land of wide open spaces and rugged landscapes. Here you might encounter a sand groper. That's what they call a Western Australian, named after a local marsupial that digs burrows in the sand. And if you're in the mining regions, you might hear about FIFO workers. That stands for fly in, fly out. These are the hardworking folks who fly to remote mining sites for their work shifts and then fly back home for their time off. It's a tough lifestyle, but it's all part of the double E-way experience. Out here in the vast station country, that's what they call the big cattle ranches, you might see a wary worker taking a smoko, a well-deserved break with a cup of tea, maybe a biscuit. It's a chance to rest those aching muscles, share a yarn with their mates, and enjoy the peace and quiet of the outback before rolling out their swag. That's a bedroll for a well-earned rest under the stars. Down south in Adelaide, the capital of South Australia, you might be offered a fritz and sauce sanga, a sandwich filled with a type of processed meat called fritz and topped with tomato sauce. It's a local delicacy that's sure to tantalize your taste buds. And if you're feeling adventurous, you might try a pie floater, a meat pie submerged in a bowl of pea soup. It might sound strange, but it's a South Australian classic. Wash it all down with a schooner of your favourite beer. That's a big glass, mate, perfect for a hot day. And if you're a footy fan, don't forget to cheer for the Crows or Port, the two local teams that are always battling it out for supremacy. Now let's hop over to Tasmania, the island state with a unique charm all its own. Here you'll hear locals calling themselves Taswegians, and they're home Tassies for short. And if you're a fan of beer, you might want to try a Bargs, a local brew that's loved by Tasmanians. If you venture out into the rugged wilderness, you might encounter a bushie or two. That's what they call people who live in the remote areas, a term sometimes used with affection, but be mindful as it can also be seen as derogatory. And don't forget to bring your hiking boots if you plan on tackling any of Tassie's famous crags, those steep cliffs that offer breathtaking views. Speaking of unique places, let's not forget about the Australian Capital Territory, or ACT for short. It's the heart of Aussie politics, where you'll find all the pollies, that's politicians in case you didn't know, hard at work in Parliament House, also known as the Hill. While the ACT might be known for its serious political scene, Aussies still find time for a cuppa and a bit of friendly banter, even if it's sometimes directed at the pollies and the Canberra Babble. That's what we call the isolated political scene here in the ACT, where everyone's focused on the happenings of Parliament. Finally, let's venture into the heart of Australia, the Northern Territory. Here you'll encounter the top end, the northernmost part of the territory, home to Darwin and Kakadu National Park. And if you're heading further south, you might visit the Alice. That's Alice Springs, the gateway to the outback. But watch out for roos on the road. Those kangaroos can be a real hazard. And if you're chatting with the locals, you might hear them say, reckon, instead of think, as in, I reckon it'll be a hot one today. So there you have it, mates, a whirlwind tour of Aussie slang from all corners of the country. From yeah, no in Queensland, to pie floaters in South Australia, to roos in the Northern Territory. These colourful expressions are all part of what makes Australia such a unique and fascinating place. So next time you're down under, don't be afraid to embrace the lingo and have a bit of fun with it. You might just surprise yourself with how quickly you pick it up. Well, folks, it's time to say hooroo for now. Thanks for joining me on this journey through the wonderful world of Aussie slang. I hope you had a good laugh and learnt a few new words to impress your mates. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to give it a thumbs up, share it with your friends, and subscribe to my channel for more Aussie goodness. Hooroo, mates.